victory and the agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Petticini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold this!
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to an emergency edition of the Tip Sheet podcast. This was not a planned, scheduled, or intended podcast, and unfortunately comes on the back of some pretty negative news. As I imagine you all would have known, been in attendance here and watching the news and reading the title of this particular podcast. Zac Lomax is no longer a Parramatta Eel, has been released by the Eels as of Sunday evening. To break it all down, I've got my good friend here, Sixties, aka Craig. I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. This is the Tip Sheet podcast. And yeah, we're live on a Sunday night. Thank you to everyone that's turned out in chat. It's a great turnout for a pretty unfortunate set of news, something that we've been fearing was in the works for a while, ever since the R360 connection first emerged, going back, months now, right, 60s? But it's eventually come to fruition, and the Eels, well, where to from here?
Yes, John, quite the introduction there. And of course, this is coming to you by popular demand, because my devices were literally melting down with everyone sending me their thoughts, their opinions on what's transpired. And really the only way that we can respond to all of that in any sort of short period of time is via this podcast. So thank you to everyone that sent a message. My phone was making more sounds than the Dragon train during a feature. It was absolutely going off. So, yeah, again, thank you to everyone for tuning in. Thank you to everyone for the messages. Hope all of you have been able to tune in now. We're trying to get our thoughts together. John, I'm already fuming at having to deal with the hospital system on a weekend and how short-staffed they were and the ridiculous things they had to put up with regard to mum's care over the weekend. But that's a whole other issue, and I could go into it right now, but people aren't here for that. So I say that to preface that I'm somewhat angered at the moment, and I'm not sure who I'm angry at. Am I angry at Lomax? Am I angry at contracts that don't mean shit anymore? Am I angry that we don't seem to have anyone in the works at the moment, not that we're aware of? Maybe negotiations have been going on with the Eels.
Sure, surely something's been on the background, because as we mentioned in the lead-off, that this wasn't an overnight development. The Eels have known about the Zac Lomax potential to go to R360 for a number of weeks now, if not months. And I think David Riccio on the Daily Telegraph, in an article, my mate Ron, brought it up to a footy chat I had, that the Eels were prepared for this outcome, or at least that was weeks ago. They said they were prepared for this outcome. So we're going to find out if they're going to be able to walk the walk after talking the talk.
Yeah, John, the sense that I got from a couple of discussions that I had with club people was it wasn't phasing the club about what had happened. Now, obviously, it puts into perspective bridges being mended with Bailey. And we were glad about that, regardless of what was happening with Zac. Let's make that perfectly clear, because Bailey is a quality NRL player, a fan favourite for many. And at this stage, you simply lock Bailey in for a wing spot for where Lomax was. However, and this is the big however, when we go underneath NRL level, there is not an outside back in the Eels club below NRL level who has any first-grade experience at all. Now, that's on the assumption, as we feel that it's the case, that Jake Tungor has moved on, because he hasn't been at training. There's been nothing said about what his contract status is. A number of media posts are listing him as a player who has departed the club. So I don't know what's happening there, but you cannot hope to get through an NRL season with just your first options in the backline. And let's take last season, for example. Sean Russell had a breakout year where at the start of the year, probably most pundits didn't have him in their selected team, their first option team. And yet he became one of the first selected each week as the season went on. Ultra consistent. Found a home at centre inside of the Fox. Now, he came into the season with first grade experience. So he was able to fill roles that were needed at the start of the season, and then he consolidated that place, had a breakout season. But underneath the Eels this year, underneath the first grade level, there is nobody. John, there is nobody. Like it's all rookies. And I'm not including Joash Papali in that, because although Joash got a run on at wing after sitting on the bench for his debut, he is not an outside back. He is not a centre. He is not a winger. So where we go to from here, John, I know that there are probably plenty of people with their opinions about who we look at in terms of recruitment, but John, what does a contract mean these days?
That's certainly something that chats are drawing their ire at right now, that a contract isn't worth the paper it's been written on right now. And look, it cuts both ways. Right now, obviously, this is a player-driven thing, but in the past, very recently in the past, we've seen clubs use it to their advantage as well. I don't know how you go about mandating that a contract is worth what you actually shake and sign on, but the rugby league, and not just rugby league, professional codes in general, we've gone a long way away from that, haven't we?
We have. Look, let's try, and we haven't planned for this podcast at all, and people should know that when John and I do podcasts, apart from the instant reaction straight after matches, we like to put together a run sheet so that we discuss the sorts of things that are going to be the topics on our podcast, and whether that be the news podcast or our interviews or previews, we know what direction we're heading in. This one has literally been cobbled together in under half an hour of a few text messages and phone calls. In amongst the phone calls and text messages, I was trying to juggle, as well as trying to get out the Bumpers Up column, which I was in the process of publishing just as the Lomax news hit. But I want to try to maybe follow a bit of a direction here, John. I thought what I was interested in from you was, first of all, your immediate reaction, be it emotional, whatever. Then, what's your thoughts about Lomax, his time with us, and then obviously, where do we go for players from here? So first, what was your immediate reaction when you heard that news came through?
I'll quickly read the club statement first, which is a very light on statement. But they did say the Parramatta Eels can confirm that Zac Lomax has been granted an immediate release from his playing contract to pursue opportunities outside the NRL. The club would like to thank Zac for his contribution during his time with the Eels in 2025, and we wish him all the best for the future. So a very brief, to the point statement there. As far as my reaction, Craig, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I was a little bit nonplussed. I had a big day of domestic work at home, gardening, and big vacuum sweep of the house, and had tidied up. And I was just getting dinner ready. And I sort of flicked to the news on my phone, and it was getting lit up. And I was like, oh, so that happened, eh? And then I called you, and I got through to you, and it's like, what's the deets? And you're like, I'm trying to find out. My phone's blowing up. I was like, well, it sucks, but it is what it is. And there's going to be people with far more emotional and visceral reactions than mine, but this saga's played out for so long, Craig. I was tired of it. I just wanted a conclusion one way or the other. Obviously, Zac being brought in for the Parramatta Eels would have been a far better solution, but we lost more significant players to the club, both on a historical basis and on a positional basis last year, and came out the better for it. So I've got to trust that Jason Ryles can engineer some value some way, somehow again.
Yeah, look, I think all of that is a fair call. And once I rule out as I said, my predisposition to being pissed off today, because
exactly. There's certainly the opposite mitigating factors, contributing factors here.
But like you, I would say, on reflection, I'm glad that the whole saga's over. I think you've put it into a tremendous perspective then, John, when you said that the Eels have lost far more significant players, be it of historical value or the value that they brought to the team in more recent times. And a lot of players that supporters had taken to heart and were special to them as Eels players. So there's
no doubt it's a big loss. Zac Lomax is a rep caliber, like a current rep caliber winger, but he didn't come with his own caveats. I mean, we were very, not with him, but we were frustrated around the game itself that he couldn't. We would not get a penalty for him being run off the ball consistently. So that entire aspect of his game was mitigated by the opposition getting away with red murder, and the officials didn't want to see him to call it. So you don't even lose that aspect of Zac's game, one of his most dominant parts, the aerial competitiveness, because the NRL were literally phasing it out themselves. So, yeah, you lose a lot of meters on the ground. You lose a guy that is a very good frontline goal kicker, although he got the yips at times this year, obviously. You lose a guy that has some of the better speed in your team, and obviously is a fantastic aerial competitor. But like I said, we lost other key players coming into this season, and Jason Ryles found the way. And wingers, if you're talking about positional value, it's one of the lowest in the NRL. I disagree as to why they should be viewed that way. I think that wingers outside the spine handle the ball more than anyone else, and if anything, there's a notion they should be more valuable. But it is a low positional value in the NRL. Other clubs have no problems generating wingers out of their backside when it comes to a rep guy getting injured and then some young guy coming in and doing a job. We've talked about how that's been a real blind spot to Parramatta Eels, and case in point, we've got no depth behind him. But that means that out there's going to be a number of guys. I mean, you look at that Brisbane backline, the guys that can't get in there, there's going to be options out there for Parramatta to make a move, and they're going to have to be aggressive. And the thing is that, as we pointed out, this is not an overnight development. They've had the opportunity to be casing the market, to be putting out feelers, to put out tendrils, to start breaking bread with potential replacements or guys to compete with Bailey Simonson and lesser so Josh Ad-O-Carr. But yeah, they did a good job replacing guys like Quinton Gufferson, Mike Acevo, Reagan Campbell-Gillard in the year gone by. You've got to trust that Ryles and O'Neill and the rest of the recruitment and retention committee can do the same when it comes to replacing a winger.
Yeah, Ben Rogers. It's John. I guess if we're taking your stance at the moment, you could also view this as exciting times for the Eels. Could you?
Yeah, I mean,
could you?
Look, whenever there's always various adages you can use when a door closes, the window opens, or whatever. There is absolutely an opportunity here for the Parramatta Eels to go out and find some value. I don't think you're going to replace Zac Lomax 1-1. Like, I'm going to be quite frank about that.
No, that's I was ready to pounce with that, John.
And look,
because I think as things stand, you've got that immediate swap in of Bailey Simonson into that role.
So, like, yes, you're actually pretty set in your first picks. Yeah, like I'm pretty confident in Bailey coming in and doing a really good job. And it's easy to forget, given that a lot of fans lost some faith in Bailey because of the sequence of events that happened recently. But prior to that partial and then full ACL injury, he was absolutely braining it for the Parramatta Eels. He was killing it. So he's been right up there in form. I think he comes in and does a great job for the Eels. I don't think you lose too much in that regard. Huge concerns about the depth and not just the depth, but the pipeline for the Parramatta Eels when it comes to the wing. It's a big blind spot. It should not be a blind spot. It's the most simple position to scout, or at least on surface value, it should be the most simple position to scout. I don't know what's going on there. We're doing wonderful things in other areas. Like, I'm not panning our junior development as a whole. I'm just saying that in this one particular position, it's the one position. Everything else, we're going great guns. Halves, we're producing as many as any other NRL club. Forwards, fantastic. Centres, we're still getting centres out there too. You look at Will Penasini and Sean Russell in recent seasons, and there's a couple other young kids in the pathways too. Wingers, though, no idea. It's just not working for us, and it's kind of crazy. But again, Ryles and his brains trust were very focused in how they went about things last year. They found players in reserve grade that were completely undervalued relative to the NRL. Isaiah Yonge probably wasn't one of them because he had a bit of a rap after debuting for Penrith and being in that pathways. A lot of people knew about Isaiah Yonge as a potential prospect. So that was just good recruitment for the Parramatta Eels, but no one knew about Keon Katonga. He played a couple of NRL games, but no one knew about him. No one knew about Jordan Samrani. Joash Papali'i was a rated Bulldogs junior, but never kicked, like in their system for whatever reason, wasn't given the opportunity to kick on. Did it at Parramatta. So you got to imagine that they've got a couple of guys that they can target, and certainly the Eels can now offer them solid funds inside the top 30, not necessarily star money, but funds and the ability to compete, which is what most players want.
And John, I should also mention, because you brought up Jordan Samrani's name, I didn't include him because I think the club sees him now as a back rower, not as an outside back.
Yes, correct.
And he doesn't really possess the pace of an outside back that you would want there.
No,
so,
great emergency cover in the back line, but I think you see him as a back rower / centre, not a centre / back rower.
Yeah, and let's face it, if he were we to lose a winger, and I think we're going to replace the winger with Jordan Samrani. He may have been able to fill in for a game or two last year, but his development was trending towards that back rower position. I don't think they're going to veer away from that at the moment. John, just on Zac Lomax, and I just wanted to touch on this very quickly because I don't think there's much point in spending any depth of time on it. But I'll now look back at Zac Lomax as a guest player.
Yeah,
I
19 games.
I can't look at him as an Eel. And look, he's going to be. He'll have his Eel player number. He'll be an old boy at some point in the future. But especially when these rumours started coming out, you just felt like his time in the club is just. It almost felt like we were waiting for something else to come along, despite him having a long-term contract at the club. Now, I'm not sticking a dagger in his back or anything like that, because if all this with the 360 comes to fruition and he gets the sort of money that's being talked about, hey, who can
I mean,
knock him?
Yeah, he's tripling his annual earnings. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like if you look at this in the context of your 9 to 5, and an opponent or rival company comes to you and says, "I'm going to triple your salary, give you twice as many holidays, and let you go travel around the world," you'd be crazy not to take the offer. Obviously, within the framework of rugby league and professional sport, it's far more fanatically driven, right? You're a fan. You care parochially about your club, about your team, about your players. So we sort of get that kind of extra layer of passion attached to it. But yeah, if you're looking at it in isolation, he'd be crazy not to fight to get this offer.
Yeah. Now, here's let's look at some realities. The club now sits at 26 players in the top 30, including Ryan Madison. So for all intents and purposes, we've got only 25 players in the top 30. There has to be 3 spots, and this is on the proviso that Ryan Madison, a new home's found with him. That's all finalised. As much as we also want we wanted the Zac Lomax thing finalised, man, do we want the Ryan Madison situation finalised? But if he's finalised, 3 places, John, 3 places have to be filled before round 1.
There are some technicalities with that in terms of filling the roster spots, and if a player departs and you are contributing some of their salary, it can be deemed to be a top 30 spot for the sakes of meeting those requirements. But in the case of Zac Lomax, you'd imagine it's a full-on release. In the case of Ryan Madison, you can probably talk about maybe that falling into the capacity of being able to be counted as a top 30 spot because the Eels have signalled they're willing to pay a significant portion of Madison's contract to a prospective future employer. But yeah, the reality is that the Eels, they've got some serious roster work to do if they're going to be compliant with what the NRL says are top 30 deadlines.
Yeah. And look, John, I think we can maybe, and the club may well fool around with that with Ryan Madison as a way of dealing with their salary
one spot.
cap.
Yeah, exactly. Manipulating one of the top 30 spots. Yeah.
To then target 27 more seriously. And I never want to, I hate talking about 12 months down the track or what have you, and not having some serious goals for the immediate upcoming season. But at the very least, there's 2 spots that they won. And I say that from a playing perspective. And in the column that I wrote, I had been writing today, John,
and then feverishly had to update. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like I had to do the quickest of updates. And especially I had a segment there on the roster, on recruitment, and where things stood. And I had things about if Zac Lomax leaves and blah, 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 blah. And anyway, when I looked at the roster and I thought, okay, there's some glaring holes there for me. The glaring holes being dummy half, because outside of our top 2 dummy halves, there isn't anyone who is at a New South Wales Cup level or anyone they would use at New South Wales Cup outside of maybe Lockie Kanikis, who I would think they would start the season in Jersey Flegg. Given that he's only just come out of SG ball. So we don't have a recognised dummy half at that level. So that was the first thing. But the second thing was exactly what we're talking about right now, which is where's the NRL experience in the outside backs outside of the NRL first grade, that if Zac Lomax goes, look at what we're left with. And that's not a slight. Believe me, I'm not putting down the players that are there. It's just a matter of you don't become an NRL player overnight unless, well, sometimes you do, I guess, with Riley Smith coming out of the blue last year. But you want players to be given their opportunity under planned circumstances, John. Not, well, this is our only option. So I was always concerned about where we stood with the outside backs. I actually think there's no dramas in terms of what we can offer with the forwards. And maybe you pick up a Keon Koloamatangi and all of a sudden it's happy days. But the backline to me was a pressing need. So you've been talking about this, plenty of talk there in chat about what the options are. Let's throw it open. What are the options?
I'll get everyone to recommit their options here because chat is just gone crazy. It's gone so fast that we've had probably more comments than on any other podcast at this point. Pete, some people saying that your sound's cutting in and out, Craig. I've got other people saying that sounds fine. There's not much I can do on my end because we are on a VoIP protocol here. So
let me just check a few things with my device.
I'd say it's, if anything, it'd be an internet connection. But we've got a couple people saying that you're dropping out. So while you fix it, I will ruminate on what chat is saying. I've got people saying I'm also cutting out. I'm definitely not cutting out on a technical level, guys, because I have with the earbuds live monitoring. So if it's happening, it's a YouTube thing. It sounds like I'm not dropping frames. Craig is coming through clean on my end. My Discord connection is clean and whatnot. So if anything's a problem, I'd say it's a YouTube thing, and I do apologize, but that means that the VOD and the podcast when it goes up on SoundCloud will be clean. But I know it's small souls, everyone that's live having issues. But while that's happening, I will run through some of the names being proffered by chat, Craig. JJ starts things off with Jake Avarillo. Neil Ross wants to go back to the well, bring back Semi. JJ then throws out Tola Kula. Chris Hill saying Will Warbrick. We got Ruben Garrick being shouted out there by Neil.
Ruben Garrick's been a bit of a rumour around for a while, hasn't he? Jesse
Arthur. JJ's he's throwing him out there. I like it, mate. Jesse Arthur being thrown out now. Selwyn Cobbo. I'm probably not in on Selwyn Cobbo, but certainly a talented player, but I don't like the motivational issues.
But what in terms of availability, when are these players?
Yeah, that's obviously the other question too. I mean,
Selwyn Cobbo's only just signed
to the Redcliffe Dolphins or the Dolphins.
Yeah.
I think probably the one thing that really comes to mind, not individually but collectively, will be Cronulla up against the cap, or at least reportedly up against the cap. They've been trying to shop Jesse Ramian, but the Eels obviously have a need for a winger and not a centre. So maybe you could make something happen there. And look, you can talk about contracted players that are probably stuck on the depth charts. I don't know if you can look at the Brisbane Broncos and some of their depth backs there. That might be a play. Dean Mariner, I know, just re-signed, but maybe you could convince him to come to Parramatta. He's
Man, he would have been a great one to chase. We know our good mate Bernie
has a rap on
we were
Dean.
talking about him a couple of years ago.
Jesse Alpha, as we had mentioned before. Just trying to think positionally, like what would be out there.
This is the thing. It's almost like
Mawene
you have
Hiroti
to
out
shake
at
the tree.
the
You have to
Sharks.
shake the tree and see who drops out.
Samuel Stone Street just re-signed with the Sharks, but again, if they're feeling the pinch on the cap, maybe you could make a play for him. Equally, Sione Katoa was one of the players touted as being potentially a cap casualty at the end of his contract at Cronulla. Would you be interested in Sione Katoa, who comes with his own strengths and weaknesses? He's a short little wrecking ball, almost the complete opposite of Zac Lomax in many ways, right?
Yeah.
You know, dominant tackle breaker, but not great under the high ball. Zach was a great ruckman and very high, very powerful under the high ball. But yeah, I mean, Cody Ramsey's not a wing, but he's signed.
What is the story with Avarillo, John?
He seems to be connected consistently with a departure from the Dolphins. That he wants to come back to Sydney and is probably going to be squeezed out of that very talented Dolphins backline. Problem is that Avarillo is more of a centre 5'8" than he is a winger. And not to say you couldn't play him on the wing, but it's not a specialist pickup. But it is a pickup that does reinforce your backline in general.
John, what what we're talking about right at the moment are some of the players that you'd probably describe as, NRL regular wingers, right? But if we're looking at someone who's maybe emerging at another club, has played some first grade, isn't getting a run, what are we talking about? And again, I'll throw that to chat as well. Are there players that you've noticed yourselves?
Well, if you go on the Canberra strategy and you're looking at the under-19s origin teams, you've got Luke Laulii and Jeffro Rinakama. Obviously, Rinakama plays for the Bulldogs and has been in first grade with them, but Philip Coates, I believe the younger brother of Xavier, and Sonny Karma were the starting four wingers in that New South Wales Queensland game that was played earlier this year. Beyond that, so talking about breakout candidates, what about looking at Cup, just seeing who's floating around? Grand final was Warriors and Dragons. Setu 2, Edward Cozzy. Cozzy's a great NRL player at 26. I don't know what his contract status is. You've got Setu 2, 27 years of age. So, yeah, you don't need a young guy. You need a fringe guy, though, right? Or a guy with experience.
Look, this is what I'm saying is that...
Tom Jenkins, someone's throwing up in chat.
Well,
Casey McLean, I think, is optimistic because Penrith are going to be wanting to lock him down long term. He's been a real breakout star for them. But
Tom Jenkins is the sort of player that I'm thinking of.
Blake Wilson just went to Manly, which would have been perfect as well.
Yeah. Because we're not necessarily saying you've got to shove Bailey Simonson out or Sean Russell or Will Pinasini. The Fox has been on fire, so he's locked in. I'm saying that the Eels backline, the first choice backline as it is it's really solid. It's really solid. It's not. Is it premiership contending? Is it a premiership contending backline? Well, people might want to argue about that. But what I'm saying is, much like what happened with Pezzett, right? So if we hadn't signed Pezzett for this season, and I've really come around to this point of view, if you had an injury to Mitch Moses and we were going into the season with Mitch Moses and Joash Papali as the halves pairing, as was the indication from last year, an injury to Mitch Moses and then the halves pairing, because Dean Hawkins had departed, was going to be Ronald Volkman and Joash Papali. Both relatively inexperienced, well, very inexperienced, never mind relatively, both relatively inexperienced at an NRL level and expected to play together and to guide the spine, along with a fullback who'd played 26 games of first grade and a dummy half who played about the same. So you're going to expect a completely rookie spine. Now, Pezzett coming into the halves gives a completely different perspective if Moses is available, and if Moses isn't available, then you can play Pezzett with either Volkman or Papali, or who knows, maybe Lorenzo Talatina later in the season. You just couldn't go into the season without having a halfback backup option. And Pezzett was not only the 5'8", he was the halfback backup option. So what are our backup options at each of those positions of wing and centre?
I'm just looking at.
We're saying there is no one with the NRL experience.
Albert Hopewadi's off contract right now, it looks like. Again, the NRL signings portal is so scuffed because they got rid of player and club options and mutual options, so I don't know if the player is truly off contract. Hopewadi, though, we got... I'm just looking at players that are either off contract or contracted for the end of 26. Chevy Stewart, but he's not a winger. He's a fullback. What else we got here? No. Sevilio, I saw it mentioned in chat, but also here, breakout rookie Sevilio Tamale is contracted at the end of 26 right now, but you've got to imagine the Raiders will be pretty keen on locking him up, but there is an opportunity there if you would like to. He's free to be negotiated with right now. So that's the Canberra Raiders. I looked at the Broncos, and there's not much there. I think the most obvious one would be Jesse Arthur's off contract at the end of 26, so that's probably your best bet there if you're going to raid the Broncos there. Going down now to the Bulldogs, Blake Wilson's obviously gone. He's off to Manly. Connor Tracy, he's not going to probably come across to be a backup here. What else we got? Anari Tuala in the 26. That could be an option there. Kay Dykes just signed with them, and he's more of a fullback, and also we're trying to probably steer away from injury-prone players. Then you've got... Who else is next? Bear with me, chap, because I am trying to process everything very quickly here. Development list.
Tuala, I'd put a little asterisk next to Tuala,
I think
because
that's, yeah.
I think he's sort of like the player that I'm thinking of, because you also want players who can come in and do a job in first grade, and maybe as well you don't necessarily want to block the potential of some of the younger ones, because we're not saying there is nobody of talent in the younger ones coming through. We're just saying there isn't the NRL experience there. Someone like a Richie Penasini might come through and be a competition for his own brother for the centre spot. Whereas Nanva also might be someone who, he's made great strides. We've got
they're also
Almadine, who's getting an NRL preseason.
Ranasini and Nanva are also special centres by trade too, not wingers.
Yeah. So these sorts of things, we can't have expectations on players who don't have NRL experience that they can step in. And I mean, what happens if you get a late preseason injury?
Yeah.
To an outside back, and you've got to start the season with someone without any NRL experience.
Avarillo and Azarko are both off contract end of this coming season for the Dolphins. Again, that leans more towards an established first grader rather than a good backup, but options there. Trey Fuller's not really an option. Selwyn Cobbo just signed with them, as we mentioned. Gold Coast Titans. God, they've got some weird contracts here. Brian Kelly's a centre more than a winger, but he's there. Harley Smith-Shields, we've looked at him before in the past. Again, more of a centre. Hasn't been a consistent first grader. Jaden Campbell's obviously not going to play on the wing. Who else we got here? Tom Weaver just signed for them, but he's more of a spine player. On to the Manly Warringah Seagulls. Aaron Schopp is a centre. Again, not a fixture in first grade by any means. They just picked up Blake Wilson. Clayton Fa'alo'o has been he's there to the end of 27, but is kind of stuck in that backline logjam. So maybe you could look at him.
I was sure I read somewhere that they were looking to part ways with him.
Well, there could be an option there. He's not a specialist winger, but he has played across the backline for them. Who else we have there? That's probably it for me. Cole's off contract in the 26, but again, a player you could take a look at but he's not a winger. He's a centre. You can probably kick Sean Russell out to the wing in that case, I guess. Got people saying the hammer, Philip Sami. Yeah, Philip Sami's not bad, but apparently they were going to mend that bridge there, JJ. So I'm not sure if that's still an option, but I wouldn't mind Philip Sami.
Yeah, could live with Philip Sami.
Warren saying that Tommy Talau was signed with the Roosters. That would be an option there too. Matty Butcher saying Joey Manu. Want to swing big? You're a big fan of Joey Manu, obviously. Would you, again, you'd be playing him in the centres more on the wing and then engineering a backline around that. I did mention Sevilla Tamale. But Canberra would be keen to retain him, so you'd got to open up the purse strings there. But the Eels do have a $700,000 void in their cap right now, courtesy of Zac Lomax. So certainly not an impossibility there. Melbourne Storm. You've got Dean Aremia, Grant Anderson. They're both off contract, like they're free agents right now. Jonah Pezzett we obviously picked up. Marion Seve is a centre, not a winger. Sign Ryan Pappenhausen for a year. Just get him to skip R360 for a year. Play on the wing. Will Warbrick is contracted to the end of 26, but you could look at him, but he does come with his own concerns around concussions. He missed a good chunk of this year with those concussions. Newcastle.
John, immediately as you're saying those names there, immediately I'm thinking Jason Ryles' connection with the Storm.
Yeah, could lead to a Grant Anderson or a Dina Remia coming up to help cover, yeah.
Because as far as I'm concerned, I think there are, if we've got a minimum of 4 places, maybe 5.
Anderson's off the Broncos. Thank you, guys. Yeah, that's why I hate the NRL signings portal, because it says he's off contract at the club, but then doesn't specify that he's gone to another club. So, yeah.
So, the way that I see it, John, is that I honestly think that the Eels need to pick up 2 outside backs, be it a winger or a centre, before round 1.
I think it's got to be 2 specialist wingers. And then maybe one of the wingers has the ability to help cover the centres, but we've got no wingers. If we have to, you can throw a Richard Penasini or a Raz Nava in there. You've got Jordan Samrani, who's also an option there. You've got a couple of back rollers who can do a job there. Right now, we've got nothing if something happens to Josh Ad-O-Carr or to Bowie Simonson.
And look, it's not out of the realms of possibility to have 2 injuries.
Oh, look, the Parramatta Eels know that when you have 1 injury, you can have 2 or 3 at the same position. That's one of our specialties in recent years, is not having a couple of injuries spread across the team in different positions, saying, well, screw your halves depth, screw your wing depth. We're going to nail you in the one spot and really test how deep your stocks are. So, yeah.
Claire, we don't have to go back too many years to when we had Ray Stone playing at dummy half in the finals game.
Exactly.
When our 3 specialist dummy halves were all out injured, every one of them. So we know that these things can happen.
Vunivalu, I'll probably pass on Vunivalu, Joel. I wasn't a huge fan of his when he was in his prime in the NRL, and he's been out for a number of years now. Hayes Perham did his ACL run again, so he's not coming back. I agree, Ronnie, that you do have to say in Ryles we trust, but it is a frustrating situation. There are guys out. I mean, I've gone through half the teams here. We were at Melbourne. Newcastle, I imagine, is going to have a few guys there too as well. Dan Gagai is off contract end of next year. Could you help the Newcastle Knights in there? Pinch salary cap, getting a veteran player there? Maybe.
But again, that'd be one that I wouldn't mind at all.
What else we got here? There's options out there. The question is, will they want to shoot for a star, or are they going to be happy if Bowie Simonson, knowing that he has done the job in the past, and they just want solid backups behind him? That's going to be the most interesting part of this recruitment drive for mine, is how much because the other thing too is if you spend on a star winger, that takes away a lot of your purchasing power to go and get a Keon Matangi. And this could be a silver lining opportunity for the Eels in that regard, where they have a chance to reset their cap investment in the backline. Yes, it's painful. It sucks to lose Zac Lomax. But that's $700,000 free that could go now into a $250,000 player. You have $500,000 queer to then reinvest elsewhere. So, I don't know. It's how do they attack this, Craig? There are not any number of ways, but a pretty interesting amount of permutations available here for the Parramatta Eels. Do they look for the cheap value, which is where they struck a lot of gold this year, in the likes of Sam Rani and Kitiana Katonga and Josh Papali and so on and so forth. Those guys, that was their bread and butter this year. Do they try and back that up for a second year and then put those resources elsewhere? Don't know.
Well, look, I think the decision on Lomax had to come because I think he would have been just about due back to pre-season now, and they don't want someone in pre-season who was not going to be there. They already made the call on Ryan Madison, who should have been back there now as well, and they've said don't worry about coming to pre-season. So they've got the announcement out about Lomax. They've made it very clear. They've not been secretive in any way about Ryan Madison, that he doesn't need to be at pre-season training. But again, John, at some point, they have to have the players there who are going to do the job. And like just seeing the outside backs do their work at the moment, there's not a huge number of them.
No.
When it comes to the outside backs doing the work.
No.
When they break up into their position-specific sort of drills. And, it's... You hope that what's been happening, and you assume that it has, is like the duck on the surface water of the lake. It looks to be nice and calm on top, but underneath the paddleheads going on furiously. As you said at the start of this podcast, this has not been something that hasn't been on the agenda for a while, that it was likely to play out this way with the loss of Lomax. You'd have to think there were contingency plans that were there. As a supporter, it's frustrating that we don't know about it. But as the thing is, as we know, and I'm going to come back to that Peasant situation, the Eels themselves knew that Dean Hawkins was gone, but they weren't in a position to go and announce that.
And it's the same thing with the release of Dom Ferrugia, who was a young player we both really liked. The club made that decision to release him knowing that Zac Lomax was going to be leaving. That wasn't, again, not an overnight development in the Lomax side of things. So hopefully you don't make those kind of moves without a plan, is what I'm sort of intimating here. I see Jackson Purdue's name coming up a couple of times.
If you got him, seriously.
Joel's asking if we don't rate Ruben Garrick, because I just forgot to bring him up. You did mention that Ruben Garrick's been linked to us. I mean, real professional pickup that would be. Like, that's a guy that comes in, gives you a coverage across centre, wing and fullback, will probably be your primary goal kicker. He'd replace one of Sean Russell or Bailey Simonson. The other one would have to compete for the free spot. I don't know who that would be. Sean Russell is the incumbent, obviously, backline member, but in a way, Bailey is now the, not incumbent, but the front runner for that open spot. But yeah, I would not be upset with Ruben Garrick. But yeah, Jackson Purdue, he's off contract, free to talk right now, off contract end of the upcoming season. But you could probably facilitate something faster if you could convince him to come here and play in the centres, or I guess 5'8" but obviously the Eels do have some other players internally that would like there as well, but that hasn't stopped them chasing halves. So Purdue could be an option. I'm certainly not against that. Not against Ruben Garrick. Neil Ross saying that right wing would be Garrick's best spot. Completely fine for that. And even Garrick's obviously been another player linked to that Perth venture too, who could maybe be a transit player for the Parramatta Eels. But the difference in between signing a transit player, knowing they're a transit player, and then signing a player like Lomax and then getting the little tourist trip from them is completely different, isn't it, Craig? So yeah, you got options out there you could make happen. Like we were saying, surely the Eels have been putting out more than just exploratory feelers. Like, this Lomax situation did not happen overnight. It did not just jump up on them and surprise them. They've known about it for quite some time. David Riccio reported weeks ago that the Eels are pretty comfortable with the situation if they had to release Zac Lomax. So if they were comfortable then and there, surely that meant that they had something up their sleeves or were looking to explore aggressively to facilitate a replacement.
John, with everything that we've talked about tonight in terms of the players that are available, and we've been talking about players that are contracted for 2026 in virtually every instance, again, it comes back to the Eels shaking the tree now, because all of those players that are only contracted to the end of 2026, conversations can take place now. So you shake the tree with the conversations.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of like I said, a lot of things you can shake out from that tree right now. A ton of, whether it's an established NRL player or a rising up and comer that's only signed for next year. There'd be players beyond our purview right now that would be there. I know we watch a lot of junior pathways, but we watch it with an Eels focus. So unless there's a player that you see, like, you know, when we saw Joseph Swaley playing for South Sydney, Craig, you take notice of a player like that. You don't always you don't always clock every decent young player that's on the opposition team. So there would be tons of young players out there that would be probably on the club's radar. That the club would have their, you know, big whiteboard, blackboard set up saying that, you know, this is a player we could chase. That aren't in this conversation right now, but it's a very, very interesting situation. And look, Scott Whitney was in chat before, and he echoed my thoughts. He was saying that Bowie Simonson was at another club and in the market, he'll be considered a gun option to replace Zac Lomax. And I do agree. Like, I don't think our first choice backline has suffered a massive loss. I think that, yes, Zac Lomax does some things better than Bailey Simonson. I think that Bailey Simonson is still a very good first grader. So there's going to be a drop-off, but not a significant drop-off. What the issue is the depth. Like, you need options below that. And that's where we're sort of looking. Does the club look for cheap options, for cheap, semi-experienced, you know, replacement-level players? Or do they swing for the fences and make something happen in the back line? I'm okay with going for replacement-level players, Greg. I'm okay with finding guys that can do the job and maybe picking up a young player somewhere too. And if if they want to reinvest that money into a different position, this is a huge opportunity now. You can redistribute the value of your cap in the positional groups in a pretty significant way here, because Zac Lomax was your highest paid backline player.
Yeah, very true. John, you raised Bailey Simonson. I think he's a quality player. You and I have a high opinion of Zac as an individual. We've had the opportunity to speak with Zac over various occasions in the last couple of years. Playing for the Eels does mean something special to Zac. Everything that happened before with the media talk about him wanting out from the club, that's all been sorted out, and I think that was well sorted out before all of this happened with, I don't know that it was a case of the Eels looked at that and looked at Zac Lomax and said, well, we better sort things out with Bailey Simonson. It could have been the case, but I think from Bailey's perspective, he wanted to sort things out with the club without anything with this Zac Lomax situation anyway. So I think it's fortuitous that it's worked out that way with Bailey. And as you said, we're not going to lose too much with Bailey on the wing there, because he brings that yardage factor that we've been able to improve on in this time with Jason Ryles, whereas we just weren't getting it. We weren't getting yardage with Sevo.
There was a perplexing enigma of Sevo that, for someone as big and powerful as he was, he could not dominate the ground the way other wingers did. It was just infuriating at times. But yes.
So that yardage work was an area where we improved the transitions between attack and defence. That was an aspect that the Eels had improved defensively. Our systems improved. We just, we really struggled at times when we were down with personnel, specifically Mitch Moses. We can't afford to be down in personnel this coming season. We just can't. We got belted from one end of the Eels catchment area to the next with the injury stick last year. And it seems like every year that happens. And most of it was foot injuries too, John. That was the other thing, that it was just crazy. But we have to guard against, like, just not having the options if an injury does hit. And you know that if we get an injury, it's going to be in positions where we're short. That's just how it always seems to work with the Eels. We pay the penalty.
Gallagher saying that, speaking of injuries, that he reckons Bowie's done his hammy per his socials on Instagram. So I don't know what sort of grade that would be. Could be a minor one, but it's certainly not an ideal way to start the preseason.
Okay. I hadn't seen anything. I hadn't seen anything about that. I did see that he was at training on Friday, but not out on the field.
But that was a number of players too, wasn't it?
Yes. That's very much been the case, and you can never pay attention to who's in rehab really during a pre-season, because not unless the player's been in rehab for an extended period of time with a well publicised injury, because players go in and out of rehab all the time during a pre-season. It's they're just not going to risk a player who's got a little bit of a niggle. If a player's got a bit of a niggle, well, they're going to stick him in rehab and I guess nurse them back into the full training again. They've got no need to bash someone who's got a niggle. Like,
some bits and pieces.
It makes no sense.
I'm getting hammered right now, Craig, so I'm trying to keep up with chat. And then, okay, so we got, at the same time as what we're doing, I think Brent Reed about an hour ago did a Q&A on social, so I'm going to get to that very shortly. We did have a question from JJ in chat asking us about, where is it, JJ? You were just there. I'm blind. There we go. It's right there. Are you confident about us getting Keon and Nelson, as in Nelson and Sofa Solomona? Before we get to Brent Reed, and my good mate Ron is feeding me the info. Thank you, Ron. Thanks a lot, mate. That's actually really, really helpful. Got the PA right there helping me, the legendary PA. I would argue, Craig, that in losing Zac Lomax, it makes Nelson of Sofa Solomona that much more of a luxury signing that we should be steering away from right now, where we've lost another premium backline player. We can't be affording to throw money willy-nilly at another prop forward that is a questionable fit for the systems we have in place right now. We need to be looking double time in the backline. So, look, I'm not going to say I'll be upset. I wouldn't necessarily be happy if we were looking at Nelson of Sofa Solomona right now. I think that would be maybe a poor use of our cap priorities, given that we have zero depth at wing.
Yeah. What about Keon? Is he the sort of player that if you signed him,
Keon's
you just go, no, you just got to, he's there, you've got to take him.
A little bit different, yeah. He's definitely in that thing of, if you can sign Keon Koloamatangi, it falls on, was it Jack Gibson or one of the other great minds? You know, you get your 17 best players and you just put them on the park. He's out there. If he's available to sign you sign him and then worry about the rest later. Like, you'll figure out your fall back around him. You'll get Keon on board and then look at a package to retain Junior on a 1 or 2 year extension at a new rate and work around that and try and create a battery there. Absolutely. If Keon's available, if Keon is serious about entertaining Parramatta, and I'm going to get to that very shortly, yes. Just yes. And look, Neil, that was one thing I mentioned in an earlier podcast about Nelson of Sofa Solomona. If he came on board the Eels, would he get the Junior Bowler type overhaul? That massive body transformation, change his physique significantly to be able to play a more dynamic, agile sort of game through the middle. That would be probably the only situation I'd be on board with him coming to the Eels. But Junior's a bit of a unicorn in that regard, and his ability to transform his body with a very heavy boxing background and just a work ethic that is second to none among forwards. So it makes me very reticent to pick up a Sofa Solomona. Let's move over to the Brent Reed stuff, Craig, with some very interesting bits here. Let's start off with another backline option. Someone asked him, how is Cowboys' chances of re-signing Taulagi? Of course, that being Murray Taulagi, their Queensland representative winger. And Reed responds, last I heard he was leaving. So, not saying the Eels are a direct link there, but there is obviously interest elsewhere for Murray Taulagi. Could be a backline option. Then I got my mate Ron to hook me up with some of the other screenshots. Keon to Para likely was the question, nice and easy. And Reed responded, seems to be heading down that path. Now, don't count your chickens or your eggs from the chickens before they hatch here, but obviously,
my history.
In recent signings or near signings that could have been for the Parramatta Eels, but obviously positive news is better than negative news. The Para fans are all over this. Have you heard of Garrick to the Eels? Yes, but also Garrick to Dragons and Perth. He has plenty of interest, as he should, which is fair. Really solid first-grade player, great goal kicker, positional flexibility. He just fits into pretty much every backline in the NRL, but Eels linked there per Brent Reed. Okay, and this is a general question. What's your prediction, Para? With all the coin they have, who do they land? Space question mark. Also a 2/3 ellipsis somewhere in there as well. Knowing the Eels, they'll take their time and be smart with their cashola, which has been a directive under Jason Ryles. There's been a very much a degree of deliberation, deliberate and intent behaviour with their signings, which is good. And then we've got another one here, which is another direct Lomax question. Who will the Eels look to as a replacement for Zac Lomax or Lomax? And Reed says, a bit raw at moment. Everyone's got a bit raw at moment, but they have options for 27. 26 might need someone to shake loose. That's with the front. I imagine that's been our front liner. If you're talking about as like a representative or near representative caliber player that replaces Lomax. If you're going down the path where you're looking to replace Zac in the aggregate with a number of depth options, then obviously it's completely different. But Reed, per Reed, and as we alluded to and imagined through the podcast, it does seem to indicate the Eels being pretty aggressive in the back, behind the scenes here. They're exploring a number of different players, different positions, different opportunities. A degree of it is waiting to see how the player market shakes out to them, and that's something the Eels have always been very patient with. It's part of their roster mandate almost, Craig, isn't it, to have that 29th and to 30th spot open mid-season so they can make a move. And they've been pretty consistent about making moves. Dylan Walker, Talon De Silva this season just passed. In the past, we've seen other Eels join the club mid-season. But yeah, it looks like they are trying to make things happen in the background. Any word on Purdue and extension? It's still on the table, a few clubs circling. So that's the latest on Jackson Purdue per Brent Reed. So thank you, Ron. Much appreciated, mate.
Yes, yeah, it's really when we've got people in the TCT community like Ron who help out, it really makes our job that much easier when we're trying to, when things are unfolding live, because this whole thing is unfolding quite quickly and unfolding literally as we're on air. So, yeah, thanks, Ron.
Let me embarrass him a little bit. There we go.
So, John, I don't know that there's too much more that we can cover at this stage unless there's other questions there from chat or some observations.
I lost ball for Keon Kalamatangi, which is not a surprise. He's a very talented player. Gives you the direct successor to Junior Barlow on the field in that leader in the pack. Any other thoughts, guys? JJ thinks that Murray Talangi will be the best option for 27, not 26, though. I mean, Murray is obviously a very talented player. Hang on. Do we have more? Hang on. This is... is this...
John, surely there's a player listed by SEN of the former Parramatta Eels players. That team list that they put out.
God, there was some stretches in that. I don't know if you guys saw it. That was engagement bait. There were people that didn't even play for the Parramatta Eels there. The Penrith prop forward, Lindsay Smith, was never a Parramatta Eel at any point. Are they saying by catchment? I don't know.
I think he went to a barbecue in Borkham Hills once.
He went to Patrician Brothers, I think, which the Eels share with Penrith. Like, that's a mutual development ground for the Eels and the Panthers. I don't know. Look,
the interesting thing too, John, is when you get team lists like that, which are a stretch in the first place, the next thing you do is you go, how many teams would that team beat at the moment? And then secondly, how many of those players would you prefer to keep above
exactly.
the players that are currently signed?
Yeah.
And
the West Tigers one that goes around is always much funnier. They've lost some legitimate superstar team in players that have spent time in their system. But yeah, they're both engagement bait. Like, it is what it is. We've got questions about both Fermor.
The Panthers team of departed players would be the far more interesting one to look at.
JJ asked us about Bo Fermor. I haven't heard anything about Bo. I don't know about you, Craig, but the Titans seem to be shoring up right now rather than cutting loose.
Yeah, and the other thing too is I think the situation of Ryan Madison doing a deal with him to the Titans, I'm sure that was all tied in as well. So
to any potential move there,
that was So
this is there's going to be pretty. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some rapid developments here. We're going to record on Tuesday as usual for our news podcast. You can count on the fact that by Wednesday or Thursday there'll be some breaking news. That'll be why couldn't it have been there for Tuesday? But the Eels got to kick the tyres pretty
Well,
quick.
it'll be breaking news tomorrow morning, John.
Yeah,
After we're doing
look,
this
and if the Eels if the Eels do something crazy between now and Tuesday, we'll have another emergency podcast. But for now, I do think that things will quiet or simmer away just quietly for at least a few days. Eels going to be working like a duck, calm on the surface, and then kicking crazy under the water, trying to make some stuff happen here. I know who pointed out. Someone pointed out that when I said that the club said they were kind of comfortable about Lomax staying or going, that was what else they're going to say. Look, I understand what you're saying, but this is the same club that again culled Quinton Gufferson, Mike Acevo, Reagan Campbell-Gillard last year. Like they've made bigger moves in tougher windows and made something happen. So live chat with Mark O'Neill. No, Michael, unfortunately that's not on the cards this week, but we do have our end of season exit interviews of Mark O'Neill still to come, and you can bet your bottom dollar this is a burning question that's now been penciled onto the sheet. If it hasn't been solved by then, gonna have to put get the light underneath the foot and get it going on him and just say, "Come on, Mark, what's happening?" But you got to imagine by the time we have a chance to sit down with Mark, the Eels should have at least solved one of those roster spots, if not both, if not two. I really hope.
Yeah, well, I had a chat to Mark last week, I think it was, and he indicated the coming 2 weeks were a bit full on. And then
that would probably win with that probably would have been said with the knowledge internally that they were going to have to deal with the Lomax fallout, because again they don't make this decision lightly, so that would have been in the works. So yes, Chris Hill, great point, mate. Those that haven't caught it, the Riley Smith interview by the Parramatta Eels was great gear. I imagine you've seen it, Craig, but it's a very good listen, very good watch.
At the time that I saw it, there was only, I don't know, maybe 500 views on their YouTube channel, and I'm thinking, nah, come on. I have to assume there's been lots of other views on their other platforms of that, because
there's so many platforms these days to digest content on, between TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, or X, where they call it these days. Blue Sky, or whatever else. There's a ton of different platforms. Ron points out that we managed to. We didn't even talk about this, Craig. It's all been doom spiraling about one winger. There was news about the other winger that we haven't even talked about. Josh Ad-O-Carr. Was
did
in.
We not mention?
We have not. We have. It was after the news podcast and then before this podcast. Josh Ad-O-Carr has, per the media, not an official release from the club, but per the media who tend to get this one right, has inked a 1-year extension with the Parramatta Eels, so contracted for the 26 and 27 seasons. Happy medium ground there. I know some people wanted a 2-year extension, Craig, but Ad-O-Carr is now 30, so it's not like you can just throw out those extra years willy-nilly. They will have the opportunity to expand him, extend him again if they want to. But 2 more years of the Fox at Parramatta. That's some good gear as well.
Yeah, it's good news. It's good news on the field. It's good news off the field, because he is just a great bloke to have in the Eels community. He's just he's a phenomenal personality. He really gives back to the community in a way that sets standards for a club. I know he had these problems before he joined the club, but I'll tell you what,
you make an error, you get the second chance. You get the second chance. Obviously, if he trips up again, that's a separate issue. But he's made every move the right move this year for the Parramatta Eels. And like you said, his character and his personality are infectious. And I think a not insignificant part of the turnaround could be attributed to the Fox and the vibes and the, as weird as it sounds to say in light of talking about him tripping up, but the professionalism that he's brought to the team. Like he is a guy that knows when it's time to party and time to goof around, and when it's time to flip the switch and get into game mode. And he's been very good at setting the standards for the Eels in that regard. Huge acquisition. Obviously, the Ryles connection was a key part of it there. I'll talk about that point there too, guys. That's a good point to finish up on. A couple of questions about potential bans from the NRL. But yeah, it's a really good pickup. And again, that Jason Ryles connection to some of these players probably shouldn't be undersold. And maybe that's going to help inform the Eels of some of their potential moves to replace Zac Lomax in the aggregate, if they do go that way. But we do have some pertinent questions from Scratchy and Michael Formosa here, saying, is Lomax's manager, which I believe is some combination of Quinton Schivosky, former Parramatta Eel, unfortunately, and Steve Gillis, I believe it is. Not Shane Gillis, the comedian, but I think it's Steve Gillis. and I believe they go on the adage of GS Sports Management, Gillis Shavosky Sports Management. Are they going to be facing 10-year bans? And for that matter, will Zac Lomax be facing a 10-year ban? Per Peter Valandis' comments, yes, they should be. Any player or manager that were
under a current contract.
Yeah, well, the way the wording was, it wasn't even a current contract. If you were off contract and engaged with the R360 venture, you would be potentially subject to a 10-year ban. But Zac Lomax has broken 1 year into a 4-year contract offer with the Parramatta Eels. So, yeah, I imagine that will be. If PVL is a man of his word, and he tends to be when it comes to this stuff, then yes, there could be some pretty hefty bans coming on, which means probably going to see some legal action challenging said bans. And we're going to get a riveting court case about the legality of a private entity restricting trade or potentially restricting trade. So, yeah, stay tuned on that front. Billy says...
John, I've got a quick question for you. Because most of the news about R360 has come through rugby league media, has there been any significant rugby union signing to R360?
All R360 media I've seen is still in the lens of rugby league. And obviously up until this point, it had been the boogeyman and sort of nebulous, like, are they really going to get stuff together? But with what we've seen with Pappenhausen, who hasn't officially inked... Look, technically Lomax hasn't officially inked of R360. He's been given a release to pursue opportunities outside of rugby league, was the terminology used by the Parramatta Eels. So R360 doesn't exist still. Like, are they still in like venture stage trying to convince these players to sign? There was even talk of Payne Haas, Craig. I don't know if you saw this, but Payne Haas is going to ask for up to $3 million up front if he were to join or defect to R360 to ensure that he doesn't get vaporware, doesn't get the rug pull. And what I will say is that, and I've seen some people argue that R360 isn't Saudi affiliated or it's loosely Saudi affiliated. What should be noted is that, and people like to call it Saudi sport washing, where the Saudis in their infinite wealth come in and buy out a brand of sport. We obviously saw LIV Golf, Live Golf, whatever that startup football/soccer league is that has Ronaldo there. The Saudis will pony up the money, and when they're paying Live Golf players, $100 million US contracts, Zac Lomax on $2 million a year is chump change, obviously. So yeah, I don't know. Again, haven't seen rugby union players mentioned. I don't know if anyone in chat has seen a rugby union player connected. It's all been through the Shavosky connection in rugby league. So that's been the real interesting thing. It's been the GS Sports Management connection. But clearly something's happening because Pappenhausen got the release. We got Lomax with the release. Surface on Mona is entertaining R360. Yeah, Jamie, look, I agree that this is all for their entertainment. No one's going to there is no market for R360 that's going to be a real market. This is all like a game within a game, like billionaires pocket change game. Yeah, Mike Tyndall was the Rugby Union Connect. You're right, Lisa. Yeah, that was the Rugby Union Connect. But I haven't seen a Rugby Union player connected directly though, like in terms of a current player. So yeah, I don't know. It's again, despite losing Zac Lomax, there is still an element of it. It's still the boogeyman. Is it real? We have to wait and see. And Phil Eel reckons Haas will be next. Look, I would not be surprised. You're talking about $3 million a year for Haas, and he's going to get that, or asking for that $3 million up front. He's won a premiership now. He's won State of Origin. In terms of individual achievements, there's not much else left for him in the game, barring adding more excellence to the roster. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more players potentially defect. The question is, though, is how much football
what are they defecting to?
What are they defecting to? Yeah. We don't have teams. We don't have we loosely have venues. Yeah, I don't know. It sucks that the Eels got stung here, but it is what it is. And like I said, a door closes, a window opens, or however you want to spin that saying. One door closes, another opens. We do lose Zac Lomax. We do free up $700,000 on the cap to redistribute across our squad with better balance. Does that mean a Keon Matangi? Hopefully. Did the Eels go out and sign another frontline backline player? Which is a weird way. Frontline backline player. Maybe. I personally don't mind the Eels 1 to 5 right now. Iongi, Simonson, Penasini, Russell, and the Fox. We do need depth, though. We do need depth massively. Some people are speculating on a breakdown in the connection between Lomax and Ryles. I cannot speak to that, guys. If you've got insider knowledge about that, maybe. But from what we saw, the Eels finished the season red hot. The team was firing on all cylinders. Everyone was bought in. Lomax has got the opportunity of a lifetime. He's been, if the reports are true, he's been offered $2.2 million Australian a year to play far less games, to tour the world internationally. Like I said, if you take away the lens of it being rugby league coded, like sports coded, if this was just, a bloke working at Woolies and he was one, $80,000 a year to stock shelves a year, and then someone from Coles came out and said, here's $250,000 to work half as much, but, go tour Europe and America to look at other shops. It's a complete non-decision, even if you had a contract of Woolies, isn't it? You'd be doing everything you could to get out of it.
Yeah.
It sucks for us.
Yeah.
Obviously we have a huge bias towards the Parramatta Eels. It sucks that contracts are not worth what they've been written on right now. But the Saudi sports washing, if that is what it is here with R360, it is the equivalent of generational wealth when it comes to rugby league that you're just not going to see elsewhere. So it sucks and I don't like it, but it's kind of hard to say, well, you made the wrong call. But yeah.
John, I think you've wrapped it up perfectly. I've had a number of people over the years say to me they love listening to the podcast because it's like a therapy session for them.
Well, I hope there's some therapy done today. This is a rough day at work today.
But I think maybe the way you've summed that up has provided a lot of balance. I know myself talking through it just in this podcast with you, I'm probably not as pissed off as I was earlier today. And I think there's, I won't say that there's a light at the end of the tunnel yet, because you'd love to know what has been going on behind the scenes in terms of players that the Eels are talking to. Will they shake someone free in the next month or so that can join the pre-season, be part of the Eels campaign in 26? You'd like to think so, but it's going to be one of those things where we're probably going to have to be patient and wait and see what happens. What we do know is that they do have to recruit. It has to.
It is a literal requirement. Yeah. Yeah.
So, so whether they've now got effectively 25 players on the roster, spots for 5 more. So
and look, we've heard conflicting things about the state of Parramatta's salary cap. We've heard that they've got a war chest. We've heard that they're very tight against it. I think the truth lies somewhere in between it, as is often the case.
Definitely in between, John. There is, I don't believe there is anywhere near the war chest that people believe, because there's been upgrades to all those players that made that next step. Players that have extended,
but equally, I don't think that we're pinched that we can't make a signing, and that was before Zac Lomax was given a release. So I think the Eels have the latitude and the opportunity to make something happen here. I wouldn't be expecting necessarily a splash signing, just because, like I said, the redistribution of our cap would maybe mean something geared towards a mid-season signing, maybe, or a signing for 27 that you're trying to facilitate into 26. I don't know. Like if the Keon stuff is true, can you maybe manipulate Souths into an early release? Who knows? That's always how it goes, isn't it? Once you sign a player. It's a chest, not a war chest, Chris. That's exactly the way I'd put it. Yeah.
and John, there's I've been looking at some sort of numerology when it comes to 2027, and I'll go, let's see, 27, 2 times 7's 14. 27 will be 41 years since our last premiership. You reverse those numbers, the 14, the 41. There's something can be made from that. So
the other thing we haven't even, and this can be maybe a Tuesday topic, Craig, is that this could be a lightning rod moment for the squad too. That a player's left them and they've got premiership aspirations. Can they tighten up and rally around this moment and become a better team for it? Maybe. So that's
John. All I will say is, you had, and this is just a couple of players, maybe that can be used. A few players that maybe can be used as the barometer of where the Eels are at in terms of attitude. You've had Jermaine Hopgood, who's been right back into training. and not only right back into training, man, he was smashing it on Friday. And in the conditioning work, bear in mind, Luca Moretti and Sean Russell had just run PBs in their Broncos runs, and in the conditioning work on Friday, Hoppy was stretching out. They weren't Broncos runs, but he was stretching out ahead of those two players who were outstanding in their Broncos runs the other week. But let's now throw those two back into it. They had PBs with their Broncos runs coming back into the preseason, not in the latter part of the preseason after all the hard work and what have you. To start the preseason, they had PBs. So you know that they've been working on it. We saw both Luca and Bailey turn up and watch preseason training the week before when they weren't due back. They're there watching what's going on. So there's an attitude amongst the incumbent players, which I think is to take their game to the next level. I wrote about it in the Bumpers Up. It's just the early feeling that I'm getting from the team. Now, attitude is a big part of where a team heads. Of course, you need the talent as well. But, there's promising signs so far, John. Check out the Bumpers Up column because the Zac Lomax stuff, that literally hit as I was about to hit publish.
And the other thing too, the Eels got handed a very interesting draw. So check out that. I had a quick reaction to that as well. We'll probably go into it in depth in the news podcast on Tuesday, Craig. But yeah, it's not all sour grapes for the Eels. There's some opportunities to be had in 2026.
Absolutely, and we want to emphasise that. Although I just joked around about 27, and maybe there are some people who are talking about 27 as being where the Eels will make a strong tilt at things. We want the Eels to be finalists in 26.
Yeah.
And it's a realistic expectation. Let's really push for that, get behind the team. But John, in the meantime, we'll wrap up the podcast there. Thank you to everyone who's been there live, people who've been in there in chat, engaging with each other about this, putting forward your opinions. We really value it. This podcast came about basically through popular demand. We appreciate that. So thank you to everyone for being there. Thank you, John, for your availability, your versatility in being able to jump in and do this, your flexibility in that regard. Thank you to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and of course, the home of the Eels, Paraleagues. Don't forget, give a like and subscribe on whatever platform you're watching or listening to this on. Stand by for our next news podcast on Tuesday. There's never been any rest for what has been happening. John just mentioned the draw breakdown. There's the Bumpers Up. The content is there on TCT every week of the year. There is no off season for us. Stick with us. We'll keep the Eels news coming your way. And John, as I always say, go you mighty Eels.